Welcome to Spiritual Changemakers, the podcast that guides you through tough times with practical tools and inspiring stories. I'm Andreea Tamas, your host and the Sacred Transitions Coach. Join us as we hear from spiritual changemakers who have connected with their higher power and overcame adversity. Whether you are navigating a difficult transition or seeking to deepen your spiritual practice, our podcast provides guidance to help you find magic in the change. Come on this journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and transformation with us and unlock your potential to become your best self. Welcome, beautiful souls, to a new podcast episode on Spiritual Changemakers. I'm so excited to have Jason today with us because we are going to talk about a topic that I know a lot of you have challenges with. And we are going to talk about how to sell with love. And Jason is an expert in that. That's why I brought him here. He's the first person I brought on the podcast that's talking about sales. So he is the go-to person. I recently read his book, was absolutely amazing. He shared about multiple loves within the selling that I'm sure he's going to touch on today. And how do we overcome the fears, the blocks, and the emotional blocks? Because that's also something he mentioned a lot within selling our products. And I know a lot of you are selling their services just like me. Yes, coaching, consulting, and you feel like you're selling something invisible, which can make it so much harder to sell than a product. But before we dive deep into this amazing podcast episode, I would love to introduce Jason. And who is he? Like, we literally met, I was telling him, we met at the Mind Valley event in Los Angeles many years ago, 2018 or 19. And he is the author of Selling with Love. He's a sales and marketing consultant and host of Selling with Love podcast. And I actually have listened to a lot of his podcast episodes. And if you want to learn to sell better, make sure you go and check his podcast, okay? And Jason, he's also the visionary author of Selling with Love, Earn with Integrity, and Expand Your Impact. And I have to say that, especially the second part of the book, Earn with Integrity and Expand with Impact, was the thing that also drawn me to read his book. And he definitely has mission to redefine the art of selling. He empowers small business owners to see selling as a transformative, life-enhancing activity. So please welcome Jason. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to share.
Yes, so I would love to dive right into it. Like, selling with love. And I know from your book that you have a powerful story on what got you on this trajectory. Why this mission of selling with love? And I would love for you to share a little bit with the audience so they understand why this topic and why you.
Yeah. Well, I think the key thing that happened is and I'm sure a lot of people have a similar situation where I've interacted with a very shitty salesperson. And I think that happens to be something we've all experienced is we've been in a sales interaction that we felt yucky, we felt manipulated, we felt like the person didn't have our best interest at heart, that they were just in it for the commission or they're just trying to scam you. And it's worse with what we hear around scandals and scams that happen in every industry. Fraud is prevalent everywhere. And so we have this massive gap in trust. And what I found unfortunate is that for a lot of good people that have an amazing product that want to be able to do a positive impact, they want to make a change on the planet, they would find themselves being very holding back on their ability to sell. And the majority of that was because we have all of these ideas of what sales can look like, and we do not want to be associated with that one bit. And, I go deeper into a story where I got taken to a seminar. They got me to invest in a coaching program, only to realize that the whole thing was a bit of a scam. And I had to dig myself out of that. And I was like, if we could have the great people selling the right products, there wouldn't even be a space for these scammers to exist, because people would be able to find the right people that are doing the right thing, and they're actually presenting their offer. They're there in service, being discovered, getting the attention. The right people would have the tools to sell adequately. So that's the biggest thing I want to see happen in the world, is if I can empower the good people with the sales techniques that are absolutely critical to get people to be onboarded, to be excited about doing business with you, then someone who's a scammer, you'll be like, well, why would I do business with them? Because the person that's really good has gotten my attention, earned my trust, and I've already transacted with them. So this is what I'm trying to do, is kind of give the right tools to the good people.
Yes, and why would you tell to those that still struggle with sales, that see sales as yucky, that it's like, I just feel so hard to sell. I don't want to be pushy. Now, these are like some of the limiting beliefs. I don't want to be pushy. And I know you're mentioning in your book quite a bit about these factors and the fact that, okay, to keep following up, because I know you even gave some percentages in the book that for I think 44% of salespeople, you said that they give up after like the first follow-up, and 91 or 92% after the fourth follow-up. And as we heard in marketing, it's like we need 7 touch points, or I think now even more. So how do you go about like following up with people, and how do you even change your relationship with that? Because I know even for myself, it's like I send a message, they don't reply. I don't want to send another one because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be pushy. I don't want to like bother them.
Yeah. I wish I could sit here and just say, like, just follow these 3 steps, take this medicine, and all that fear will be gone. You'll be confident. You'll be following up, effectively. It's all done. Um, the longer I've been at this, the more that, as much as I'm someone who loves tools, loves techniques, the more I've been into this, the more I realize it's so psychological. I've had conversations with people that talked about, like, is mindset important in sales? Because there's a lot of stuff around mindset. And as someone who's very left brained, I'm always like, what about mindset? No, it has to be just better techniques or better ways of following up and better tools for following up. But the more you study it, the more you're in your space, the more you realize mindset is 95% of it. And so what can you do if your mindset is really anchored to all these negative things? Well, there's some digging and investigation required, right? So you want to figure out, like, where do you stand on your opinion on sales, and then where did we make up that belief? So you want to do some digging and investigation. So you look at, okay, what kind of sales have I been exposed to, or what kind of stories have I heard of sales that makes me have that level of distrust? What is the messaging I might have heard in my childhood that would have actually give me my behavior patterns when it comes to talking to strangers? Don't talk to strangers.
Yeah.
Or you're talking about a moment where you want something when you're a child, and you hear things such as no means no, stop asking, from a parent figure. And you're being told that when every time you ask too much, there's going to be a pain, or a loss of love from a loved one. And so you're very much trained to be attuned to, okay, do people respond to me asking? And if I've had the evidence that all of that leads to negative outcomes, you're going to put me in a role where this is going to be happening often. I don't want anything to do with that. The first thing I encourage people to do is to take inventory and investigate, where do those beliefs come from. But for each of them, you can probably find cases of something on the other side, which is where I start suggesting to look for clues of positive sales experiences. Like, you have to step back and start realizing, okay, have I ever had a positive sales experience? What was it like? What about it made it so positive? I shared a story about going to an Apple store, and then the person just being so friendly, very informative, trying to understand what exactly was the reason I wanted an upgrade. And I think one of the stories that isn't in this book is, I remember following up, was in the book I talk about buying an iPhone. I bought the iPhone. I had a time I walked into an Apple store and I said, I want to buy a MacBook Pro. And they're like, why? And then I explained them, and they're like, no, your current laptop is fine. Don't buy anything here. I now have a MacBook Pro 2 years later because I still ended up buying. And that's the reason, is because the brand equity that was so good, because sometimes they said no, and they were like, no, we want you to get something that you really need. So I'm looking at these, and I'm starting to say, okay, no, so not all sales are bad. There's examples of good sales. I'll tell you, the biggest tragedy around sales is that there are so many amazing sales that happen on the corporate level between organizations that we don't get exposed to as a consumer, that are amazing. You're talking about incredible account managers that are going into an organization to assess their needs. They have a solution that radically saves them costs or increases revenue or decreases complexity, provides peace, provides freedom of mind. And these transactions happen, and these account managers build long-term relationships. They listen, and then they only propose things that they need. This happens 80% of the time, but they don't make a movie about that. Instead, it's much more entertaining to watch The Wolf of Wall Street. It's much more entertaining to look at Mad Men or to look at Glengarry Glen Ross, where you see where there's like manipulative sales tactics makes for more entertainment. So our media is even showing us negative examples. Key thing here is, okay, if you have this resistance to sales, try to see examples in your life that you've had positive sales engagement and think of perhaps there's ways that you've seen these sales happen and you're like, I could probably do sales that way. And so you could just be open to the possibility of liking sales. Because if you're not even open to that possibility, well, forget loving sales. And the way to get to the point of liking it is just to challenge the things that you've decided are black and white, good and bad. And the more you start studying sales, the more you're going to realize, well, hold on a minute. It's not all bad. There's just a lot of bad salespeople.
Yes, so true. And in the book, I know you also gave us the action and the exercises to write those positive experiences and how those have changed our lives. And as I was reflecting back to that, I was thinking, wow, like how I discovered, for example, Mind Valley, that has been like the catalyst of my transformation. The way I discovered it was through an ad on YouTube. And how many people, and I used to be like that too. It's like you see an ad and you just resent that person, you resent that company. You're like, oh, they're bothering me with their ad. And what is happening there, because I used to be in that situation, it's, I feel like you are not strong enough within yourself to know what to say yes or no to. And you are easy to be manipulated. And I would love for us to also talk about, because that's something that draw my attention. But you're not strong enough, and then you get bothered by everyone that is selling. And I used to be like that. So going to the manipulation, can it also be good manipulation selling?
So there's specific language that I use to differentiate what is manipulation or not. But if you understand the process of selling, the tools that are available, you unlock a power to get people to change their minds that are even beyond their conscious reasoning. You can tap into the subconscious. You can go into making them experience certain things in certain ways that gets them more likely to say yes. There's entire industries that spend millions of dollars in optimizing that. So manipulation is rampant. And when you learn the tools of sales, the process of sales in itself in a vacuum, you've just unlocked a powerful language that can lead to manipulation. So particularly in my book, I go over the various loves in selling, and what I suggest for people to do even before they learn the process of sales is to get clear on the impact they do for people, on who those people are and what are their true needs, and how your product actually fills those needs to deliver on the impact, which is a quick summary of my first 3 loves in selling. But it's only once you have that in place that you can confidently go learn the process of selling, because at that point, if you have the true interest, care, well-being of the people you're selling to front of mind, then your manipulation isn't necessarily manipulation. Instead, it is empathy. The reason it's empathy is because you start to learn what is the language I need to speak for people to understand the value I want to give to them. Because just like if I'm here in Indonesia, if I go outside into a rural area and I want to use the bathroom, and then I go to somebody and I'm like, toilet, and they look at me strange and they're like, I don't know what you mean. So I just start screaming louder, and then they're like, whoa, this foreigner is weird. And then I walk away from that and I'm like, my God, these people are so mean. They didn't even want to let me have a toilet. And I realized, oh, wait, I didn't speak the language. That's why I wasn't understood. And I don't know if any of the listeners here have had a situation where you've built an amazing product. You've healed so many people, and the tools you've put together radically transform people. And then you go to somebody like, hey, I can do this for you. And they're like, oh, no. And you're like, what the hell? And then you're like, you're trying to make them understand that you're not wanting to manipulate them. You want them to experience what you have. You're even offering it for free, and they're saying no anyways. And you're like, what is wrong with these people? You almost want to like shake them, and you're realizing, wait, You're like an alien landing on Earth, speaking a different language and expecting people to understand you. The reason you're not being understood is because you haven't learned that language of sales. And that's why it becomes very, very powerful. And it's not manipulation, it's empathy. You care enough about the transformation you want to give to people that you're going to learn the language that is necessary for them to understand you. And that is a very different energy to sell from.
Yes, and how do you go about learning that? Is it like through books like yours, listening to podcasts, taking certain courses? What do you recommend people to go about to learn about the language?
There's definitely a lot that you can take away from taking courses, from reading books, but the number one thing that will improve you is exposure therapy.
Exposure therapy. Tell me more about that.
You need to get yourself in situations where you're selling. You need feedback. You need repetition. One of the greatest gifts that came to me when I was graduating university is I was looking for employment. I didn't know what to do at the time, and I found myself in a telephone sales position. And I was feeling like a telemarketer. I wasn't very excited about it. They were telling me it's not telemarketing, but it was making a bunch of calls. And what happened there is I ended up doing 100 calls a day. And it helped me get over a lot of the things that are not necessarily, and again, I can give a bunch of tips, I can give a bunch of techniques, but it's the psychological that needs to be overcome, especially at the beginning stages. I could tell you about, okay, use this specific script and these chain of words that will get people to say yes. That doesn't matter if you have fear of rejection from the moment you pick up the phone and you're shaking and your voice is trembling because you're so unused to being in a position of having to sell. It's a new muscle. If you decide to put on some fancy Nikes and run for 20 kilometers, you will hurt your knees. And so you need to start slow, and you could read as many books as you want on how to run better. It's not until you've actually picked up just run a quick kilometer, go out there and get exposed to asking, exposed to just being in a position where you're having an attempt to make a sale to somebody and then realizing what are the emotions that are coming in. And I'll tell you, you might be looking at me saying like, oh, well, you probably were always having this easy. You probably always had a natural act. My first telephone call, and I think I share that story, but on the book or not, but like I was shaking so much. And then I was like, my voice was like cracking at the same time. And the first person hung up on me after I just said my opening line. And then my boss walked in right at that moment. And for those who might be viewing this as opposed to listening this, you'll notice I have this very particular trait of being pasty white. So in the moment that I'm awkward, I turn very lobster red. And so imagine a lobster being caught with a phone, with sweats. And my boss is like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't think I can do this. I hate this. And they burst out laughing. He was a sales mentor to me. And he's like, I swear this is not how I usually do. Just do a couple more. And yeah, I was terrible for my first 50 calls, but then I had one person with a positive response. And it's really there's things you can get yourself exposed to that you can learn on the basics. Just listening to this podcast is going to give you so much about the consideration that you can like sales. It's not going to be fun at the beginning. All these fears that come up, this, am I worth it? Is my product good enough? And let's be clear, if you're selling yourself and your product, it's a whole new dimension of resistances and fears that come up. So this is where I have a recommendation, but it's not for everyone. And it's often controversial. But if I could think, it's not even that controversial, but for someone who's pro-entrepreneur, this might sound crazy. But if your fear of rejection is literally something that is, your fear of sales is literally something that is holding you back from what you want in your life. And for the majority of people, that is a very real reality. I would find as fast as possible a job in sales that forces me to have this exposure to sales cycles that even takes me away from having to sell myself first. Like that's going and play life on hard. And hey, if you're going crazy and you're going like, hell, I'm going to go and play on hard and I'm going to go all out and sell myself, I'm ready. Kudos to you. You're stronger than me. If you're going out there and you follow this recommendation is you find a product you like and try to sell it. And then go talk to as many people. And if you can be on the phone and they give you leads, that's great. Then you're just like call. And it's very quick to be exposed really fast. People rejecting you, people saying yes, you listening to your own conversation. There's so much you can learn from that. And what's great about getting a sales job is they have so much programs around teaching the skills, having you follow a process. So it gives you a really easy way to deal with the psychological things. And I know this is kind of a lame recommendation, but if someone would tell me, Jason, what is the number one tip for getting rid of sales, is get in a structure where you can get exposed to sales and be surrounded in a place where you're supported to succeed.
Wow, and I love that because I was literally thinking to ask you, like, what do you recommend for service-based, especially providers, to get over that fear and getting a job? Okay.
Well, tell you a quick example from my good friend who is a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And so I'll go and do his jiu-jitsu classes. He's had his own brand. He's an amazing teacher. So he's an entrepreneur, had his own brand, formed partnerships, has students come. And he came to me and he's like, "Hey, I'd be trying. I've seen you do sales stuff. I'd be curious to do." So I connected him with one of my contacts, and he got himself a sales job. And he's coming back to me week after week, and he's like, "My God, like there's so much I'm learning about myself, my triggers, and this emotional cycle because sales, you go through every range of emotion. It's an emotional process." And what he's realizing is everything he's learning in sales, he gets to translate back into his practice because it's about handling people. It's about listening. It's about asking powerful questions. Might I even suggest that it has major elements in coaching? Just saying.
Yeah. Oh, and I love that. And I don't see it like so controversial. I just see it more as a radical approach to be like, okay, if I really want to nail this, if I really care about bringing my gifts into the world, but I have this fear, this terrible fear that it doesn't seem that I have been able to overcome, it's just taking this radical decision. And what comes after this is like, how do you overcome? Because I know for me, throughout my journey for being an entrepreneur now for 5 years, I had many times where I'm like, this doesn't work, I'm gonna go look for a job, it's like, that's it. But then what was coming up was, but I feel like if I do that, I'm betraying my business or I'm betraying my clients for like getting a job and not focusing as much on my creation, on my business. What do you have to share about that?
I mean, it depends on the vision you have for the business, right? So, say your vision is very big and you're like, I want to impact so many people. I'm going to substitute sales with public speaking, okay? And the
Okay.
reason I'm making that substitute is we have a lot less triggers of negativity around public speaking, but we have the exact same fear. It's just one
Mm.
to many and one to one, okay? So the same fears come up in both instances. Let's say it's public speaking, and I tell you, hey, you have a big vision. And if you learn to speak on a stage and you're able to overcome that fear, you'll be able to actually make much more of an impact. You'll be able
Mhm.
to present much better for your products. You'll be able to talk to your clients much better. Then there's a part of you that would say, oh, I'm actually working against myself if I don't learn the skill of public speaking. So it's actually what's hurting the core business. The same can be said for sales. So if you see that it is something that is limiting the growth of the vision that you want to fulfill, and you're like, oh, okay, well, you're feeling like getting the job or going to learn sales as a skill as opposed to learning your craft is going to hold you back, then the question is, well, if you didn't have sales in place, would you be impacting more or less people? Would it bring you closer or further from your vision? And most of the time, you're going to realize that in order to have more abundance, success, peace, impact in your life, is the sales skill is the single highest leverage skill that you can learn that can not only make you a better salesperson, a better entrepreneur, a better person to raise money from funds, to hire employees, to coach your clients and get them to reveal to you what is their core problems and needs so you can actually help them solve it. It can make you a better parent. It can make you a better lover. It has a ripple effect into every area of your life. And so, my, okay, fair point. I am biased. I did write a book on sales, but if you rank what are the highest impact things that you can do to improve your quality of life, I do believe that learning to develop yourself as a salesperson is going to be at the top of that list.
Amazing. So I hear you saying that it's all about reframing how you look at taking that step. And truly, because I was learning about this in a course, looking at it as a bridge towards your passion, towards your business, towards your creation. Because as long as it helps you within that avenue, within that creation, which sales definitely does if you are owning a business, if you're selling anything. And As we said, selling happens at any given moment. No, like I had to sell on you to come on this podcast. No, it's like selling happens when you have a conversation with your partner and you try to sell him on let's do that activity. So it's truly starting to look at everything that we are doing in our day-to-day life as selling and being more comfortable with it. And you shared in the book a new definition for selling, which I absolutely love, and I would love for you to share that definition and go a little bit deeper into that, because also energy, I would say, it's so important in this process.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's lacks a bit of understanding in the sale is that there's always going to be an emotion attached to every sale that's made. And so I present a definition of sales, which is an energy exchange between conscious beings. And I expand a bit further by saying when you know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return, then what balances the equation is the emotion of love. And so I present it this way because an energy exchange is going to be, on one side, you're offering a product, which is the most tangible thing that we can use this example here. So if I'm offering a widget or like a pen, well, it took energy to create this pen. It had to be manufactured, designed, shipped, tested, and made available in a nice package for somebody. So energy was put into the creation of this good. And so when I go to somebody and I offer this pen, I'm like, here is a bundle of energy that will help solve a need. And how that need could solve it? Well, you get to write. I feel like this might be a new way of solving the sell me this pen example. So, okay, we have a product that's an energy, it took energy to create. And what are you asking in return? Well, the person has to balance a lot of things. There's a certain risk, but they're going to usually give you money. And how did that money appear? That money came from an exchange of goods, but something came back where you have this money. And I give a definition here, which is money is nothing else but stored energy. It's a way that activity was done that produced output that had surplus energy and you kept it. And that's why the reason it exists is because it's the most efficient and most beautiful thing that we've created to allow us the safe storage of energy. And you can go into bigger debates on what is a better method of storage, but like you look into the field, this is a bit of a tangent, but you go into a field of like solar power, wind power, renewable energy. And one of the biggest limitations they have around renewable energies is because they don't have a proper storage mechanism. Batteries are a big problem. And what we've been trying to do as humans is find the best system for storing energy. And money has been one of the greatest inventions of all time, because before having to trade you my chickens for a tractor was a pretty niche need that I needed to find someone with a tractor that wanted those chickens. So, okay, money is stored energy. So if I have stored energy and you have this product you're giving to me, and I'm like, I'll give you $3 worth of energy for this pen that maybe cost you $1 to create, as far as perceived energy value, and you exchange, that's a positive exchange. I got more from it than what it cost me to produce it. So everybody wins. Everybody's happy. It's a fair exchange. And so if you can make sure that in every sale you ask yourself, am I offering more than what I'm asking in return for that person? Then you can confidently sell with a type of enthusiasm that is not manipulation. Because if you were sitting there and you are having a once in a lifetime chance to claim a check for $1 million and you only have 5 minutes to do it, and the only thing you need to do is to sign the check, then I'll sell you this pen for $10,000. And you're like, that's expensive. I'm like, is it? Do you want $1 million? I'll only collect the 10,000 once you got the million, and I don't see any other pens around, so let's make it happen. And guess what? You'll walk away with 900,000 and 990,000. I'll make 10 grand, and tell you what, I'll buy you a first round of drinks. We'll pop champagne because we'll be able to do this. Because if not, we walk away with nothing.
Yeah.
Would you buy the pen for
Oh,
$10,000?
it is 100%.
You're going to make $1 million. Now, obviously, a crazy hypothetical. Nonetheless, is when if I knew exactly what benefit you're going to get from having whatever it is that I'm selling in your hands, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're going to be better off by saying yes to this decision, I'm going to start using the language that's necessary for you to understand that. So if you're in coaching and you're offering your services and you know that you provide healing that gets them to have better relationships, with their romantic life, in their social circles, with their family. And you realize that that amount of peace that they get to bring into their life will radically change the trajectory of their life, having more happiness, more abundance, more fulfilling relationships, joy, like simple everyday joy that they might have been lacking for years, that have had a dark cloud following them. And you can liberate them from that. And you offer your services for a couple $100 and you get to provide that. Hell yeah, you want to sell it to them. Yeah, I'm going to do a webinar that allows them to join for free to discover what the benefits are. Yes, I'm going to prepare my slides and I'm going to make an offer that if they get 10 packages or like 10 sessions, they get to have a discount so you can give them the opportunity to save. And of course, I'm going to be enthusiastic when I present it to them, because you are basically able to tell them, hey, I've been able to work with so many people that by the time they finish these 10 sessions, they no longer have this cloud following them, and they have a joy, a ray of sunshine back into their life, and they get to see themselves heals in every aspect. That completely changes the trajectory. Yeah, give it a shot. Come with me. I'm going to show you how to get it done. So now the only hesitancy that's left is going to be your confidence in delivering the product, which is a topic in itself. But as far as the selling of it, when you are convinced that what you offer is more than what you ask in return, you do what is necessary to sell it.
And can you be convinced if you are not confident in your delivery?
Well, you have to fix the problem. Or you're talking about the confidence in the delivery of your product or of your
Yes,
message?
of your product.
Okay, because those are two different things, right? So the
Yes.
message would be you're not comfortable selling. I'd rather you, if you're not comfortable selling, that's fine. That is why we're having this conversation. We
Yeah.
can improve that. I've given you some ideas, get exposed, practice. And just on a side, don't read my book, read a bunch of other books in sales. Like some of the most cutthroat books in sales from maybe the people you do not look up to. And you start reading and you're like, oh, wow, they're giving advice like listen more, identify the problem, provide a solution that they truly benefit. Sales books aren't evil. You're going to see the more you dig into it and get curious about it, you're going to be like, this is a good way to be a good human. But if your delivery of the product is not there, that's the real issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
We just like to blame sales. Oh, if I was good at sales, I'd be selling so many. But of course, these other people that are good at sales, that's why they get everything. And for me, like nobody knows how great my product is. Really? And I would call a little bit of BS on that. I think that we get into selling our own products and we lack evidence that proves that it's a great product. So we're actually trying to play safe. So we're not going to sell it too much, because the worst that could happen is they say yes and I don't deliver. That's a bigger fear than them saying no. If they say no, there's a relief. Okay, I don't need to face the real fact that I'm not even sure if I could deliver. And I love this meme. I think it's a scene from Inception, which is like Leonardo DiCaprio's telling the person, like, how do I know that you can deliver? And the person responds, you don't, but I can. And if we could be in a situation where you knew 100% that you could deliver and satisfy, because I told you the equation, when you know what you offer is greater than what you ask in return. If you're not sure what you offer, what impact it's going to have on the other person, we need to gather evidence. So if your product delivery is not something you're confident in, there's two things you can do. One is be radically studying who you want to sell to, so that you can truly unearth what are the results you're going to bring into their life. Because you have an idea of what your results are going to bring to a general audience, but when you're speaking to a specific person, if you have a genuine curiosity and interest in that person to say, hey, I have something to offer and I don't know if it's going to solve all your problems, because I don't know what your problems are. So what I'm hoping to have in this initial conversation is a bit of a discovery to see what is troubling in your life. Why are you seeking something like this? Because if by the end of this conversation, I feel like I can help you, I'll let you know. And if I feel like I can't, I'll also let you know and maybe refer you to a better path. Fair enough? That could be a great way to open the dialogue and allow you to get into these conversations to know the customer more. It's one of the 5 loves of selling is know the client. And the more you know the client, the more you're going to be equipped to design your offer to help them specifically for what they need. Then the other question is that if you've never delivered your product, you don't have any evidence that it works. And so you need to go and get as much evidence as fast as possible in the quickest ways. Like this is problem number 1. You're like, I have this thing I offer and I feel like I can promise that it does this, but I don't really know. Make a list of 20 people, go test it out, go play. Like, this is a non-negotiable. Give yourselves 30 days to get the validation that what you do makes a difference. Like stop any posting on social media. Stop learning. Stop the podcast right now. And don't do that. Finish the podcast, leave a review and full feedback, 5 stars. You definitely do that. And if you're on YouTube, leave a comment if you've enjoyed this so far. What you do want to do, though, is you need to go and put yourself out there. And like, if you're offering it for free, I don't care. If you're saying, I will pay you if we go through this and you didn't get any results, like, this is business validation number one. And this is often why we have all this noise and distraction. We're going to go do 1,000 things in other directions as opposed to the core thing we need to do, which is, can I actually deliver on what I promise? So
Yeah.
like, say I'm going out and I'm offering sales enhancement services, and I'm like, I don't know if my thing is really going to help people. Find 20 people right now. Like, I just go to any social club, find any business, and just like, hey, I'm running an experiment to increase sales. I'd love to see if I can run it on you. You don't need to pay me a thing, but if it makes results, just let me know, and we're going to test this out. You don't need to say yes to anything. Just find a way to get it done, because if you're doing it with your friends, a family member, whoever, just go and get practice, go and get it done, because then everything else is going to be a waste of time. Go do that as fast as possible, because then when you have somebody say, I really enjoyed that, there's a clue that builds the confidence, and then the self-love builds up, which is going to be necessary for you to sell more.
Yeah. And it goes back over and over again to practice. As you said, with sales, go and practice. Right now with your delivery, go and practice. And when you go about creating your method, creating a process for people, I know one of the things I have struggled with, and I've seen this a lot in the coaching and service providing industry, is you create some sort of, let's say, a framework or some structure. But then when you work with a client, you realize that I cannot go exactly by these steps, or he needs something else. So how do you go about when it comes to structure and when it comes to delivery, how stiff do you say, no, this is my method? Or you go, okay, actually, once the client is in, a lot of things are coming up and he needs all these other things. I would love to hear your take on that.
I had a client that was extremely good at designing frameworks and methods, and they would have this like 20-step process, and they were so confident that this was the best thing that they could have ever created and could absolutely transform people. And I was like, wow, okay, great. How many people have you worked this on? And they were like, well, no, I've just been designing this in my house, and like, it's using all the other best like people's framework, and I know it's the best. And I'm like, who have you shared this with? And it's a problem that I see a lot of creative people that are very product oriented, is you'll go into a cave and you will cook up your product without showing it to everyone or anyone. And what happens is you become a little delusional and angry and resentful when people just don't understand the genius behind your creation. There's so many apps, there's so many products that have failed because of that. Because at the end of the day, the product is only as good as the people who can see it's worth buying it and the people that use it and get the result that was intended for. And everything you've cooked up on the side and you've created in your corner isn't real till it's had somebody buy it or somebody use it and present an intended result. So unless you've been able to try an approach that would be scientific, like if I have a hypothesis, this will heal people, then go and become a researcher to gather that evidence. Create it's just, and of course, I'd love to bring up a controversial issue, which is, imagine that you've designed a vaccine. Do you just start injecting everyone around the world? Or do you do proper trials and you measure the results and you see if there are risks and you adjust the method? And of course, I use that one because I know it's a triggering one for the community, but you're not designing a vaccine. It doesn't have the same consequences or restrictions. And there's not, this is where I'm going to suggest people to be more bold in their approach, is that you don't need to be, okay, now I need to cook it to be perfect before I expose anybody to it. Is that it's a super low risk for you to expose someone to your method and get them to have a small result. like a single step in your process. You can be like, hey, I have this exercise I wanted to do. It's a visualization that I've created, and I'd love to get your feedback on it. Could we just do it together? And then you do it. You ask them to document their results. Could I get your feedback on that? Like, if you chunk down whatever you've created into smaller pieces and get that tested and validated, the chances of you creating an adverse effect from your method are probably going to be extremely low, that it's fine to go out and test it on people very, very quickly and iterate. And imagine you have this meditation, which is I just came up with this, but a hive mind meditation, which is all about being connected to every single consciousness. And in the meditation, you have a background noise, which is a bunch of bees that are buzzing around. So you're thinking hive
Mhm.
mind, you know? And then the first feedback you get from people are like, oh, the bees are very distracting. They're preventing me from going into a meditative state. Adjust it. Maybe get 3 more opinions, because one opinion is statistically variable. But again, if you're going with a scientist approach, you're like, let me get at least enough feedback that I think it's going to be worth changing. Although, may I suggest that having a bee's background noise is probably already doomed to fail. So you probably don't need to do too many testing there. But I'm giving you some examples that are a little more tangible. But you have to put it in front of people, or else it doesn't exist except your own mind. And hey, we know this community can have these stereotypical delulu types of ambitions that you need to go out there and validate, or else you can't be taken seriously.
Yeah, and it takes me back to a part from your book where you shared that care more about the client than your.
Strong facts right there. Who wrote that?
Who wrote that? I'm wondering. So this is where it takes me, what you just shared right now, to be so obsessed
Mm,
with your client, with the people that you are serving, and detach from what you want to sell, what you want to do within your product. And I think this is where also a lot of resistance comes in to learning the language of your clients, of your customers, of your avatar, because you're like, oh no, but this is what I want to do, this is how I want to do it, so they should understand, they should
yeah.
buy.
It's it depends on where you are on your journey. So Brand Builders Group, I think I've interviewed a gentleman from Brand Builders Group, and he was incredible. I want to give credit where credit is due, because this is not my idea, but I love the concept. I think his name is Rory. Hold on. His name is Vade. No, God. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm going to quote something that is not mine, but it's, I believe, Brand Builders Group. But they speak about the fact that there's a threshold that you'll have as an author, which is you're unknown. Nobody knows who you are. You have no control over the market until you've passed this threshold where now you have influence. But before that, you have to respond to something that will get people's attention, which is very limited. You have no brand, no testimonials, and no following, no demand that's built up. So you have to go and respond to people's needs and find a market that you can go and do something incredible, where your freedom to express your, like, what you want, unless you're really planning to stay in this lane for a long time. You're going to do a lot of testing. It's going to be, you want to bring in that marketing and sales knowledge. Again, it's like learning a language will get you to your results much faster. But there is a certain point where you've created fame and you have a ton of people that want to work with you. And imagine, the famous people, imagine everybody wants to work one-on-one with them, but they just can't handle it. There's too much demand. So then they get into a place where they're not trying to create a product to satisfy the client's need. Instead, they're trying to create a product that doesn't overwhelm them and serve as much as the market as possible. I would assume that there's not many people listening to this podcast who are in that situation. But if you are, that's when you can be like, you know what? This is my method and I'm selling it this way. Whoever wants to take it, I only have 100 spots, is gone. And then you get to dictate the market, because you have an email list, you have social media following, you have existing clients that are repeat customers because you've delivered consistently. But when you start, you got to start with responding to the market, listening, because you'll eventually see that your products are going to be shaped by the people you're helping. And you might find yourself changing directions along the way based on how you're going to grow as much as you're helping the people you're trying to serve.
Yes, I love that, I love that. And You also mentioned in the book, and we don't have much time left, but maybe you want to touch just a little bit, because emotions, as you said, sales, it's like a roller coaster. It's like, oh my gosh. And you shared four main emotions that we go through. And I would love for you to just touch a little bit, give people a taste on that point so they can go even deeper into it in the book and on your podcast.
Yeah. So, you know, selling is an energy exchange between conscious beings. And part of those energies is going to be an emotion that's attached to it as well. And we've spoken about what happens when you sell with love is when you know what you offer is more than what you ask in return. You truly have love for the transformation you want to provide for the person. So you are speaking and selling confidently, but it's not always going to feel that way. Your mind is going to have these insecurities, these doubts, and things that are going to come up. And I'll give you three other emotions that could come up and maybe some ways to investigate how you can get out of that. The first one, which is the lowest, is what I call the shame guilt emotion. So anything that makes you feel like, oh my God, if I sell to this person, like I'm a bad person. Like you're almost like hoping they say no because you don't want to be pushy, and like you don't even want to pick up the phone because maybe, and here's an example why this emotion is very useful is imagine you're selling a terrible product, a pen that doesn't work. And I'm promising you, like if I go to you and this pen doesn't have any ink, it doesn't work. And I say, you should buy this pen for $300 and I promise you it'll write as many books as you want to write. And I know that it doesn't work. I should have a response in my body that says, this is not right. There's guilt, there's shame because I'm lying. What I'm saying is not true. And it's not showing love because I know I'm manipulating you right now and telling you promises that aren't true. It's a signal, and it's a powerful signal to keep us in check to do the right thing. So I have no problem with that emotion, because if you're offering something for $100,000, but the real value might be around 1,000, you have to investigate and being like, okay, am I doing the best service for this person? So it keeps you in reality. But the problem is we have it on overdrive. And it's not because of the exchange that's happening now. It's because of all the baggage and the patterns that we've built over time, which is all salespeople are bad. If you sell, you're a manipulative butthole. My parents said, no means no, stop asking. So a follow-up means that you are basically being an evil person. And so you have a lot, that's where you have to do the training. Like this is where I'm saying the psychology of selling, the stuff that I talk about in my book really helps for people that are there. So that you could be like, oh, wow, no, actually, when I'm selling to them, I'm serving them. And there's a lot of people that'll use substitute words to mean what selling is. And I try to steer away from that because I'm trying to get people to reclaim the word sales. But for the benefit of this conversation, it's like, no, you're serving people. I'm just communicating. I'm just speaking to them. Like you want to get yourself understanding that there shouldn't be any shame and guilt if what you're offering is of true value. So that's where you want to kind of step out of that. Where the second layer of emotion is what I call the fear pride paradox. And that's a very tricky one because that's when you learn the process of selling. And I talk to you and I'm like, hey, I can sell you this pen and it's this much and you can have to buy it now. And you're like, oh, wow, scarcity and unique offer and I'll buy it now. Here's the money. And you're like, ooh, what is this power I've unlocked? I can get people to do what I want. Ha ha ha. And that can be taken far because then you start really selling. You're starting to realize, whoa, here's what happens when I follow this script. Like I was working in real estate doing those calls. At some point, I remember it was like, hi, do you currently own or rent your home? Are you looking to move in the next 3 to 6 months? Are you currently working with a realtor? Are you looking to sell your house before buying the next one? Would you be okay with sitting with me in the office? We'll do a home assessment and then we'll do a list of properties that will be perfect for you, foreclosures, banks. Like I had scripts down on lock and I could see the outcome that would happen when I followed that script. And there's a point that I would do it so on autopilot that I stopped even being connected to the buyer.
Yeah.
I was more connected to the process. I wanted to prove myself and I wanted to generate the money. And I was obsessed with more making money, not caring about the outcome for the people. And that's where you've lost touch, because the problem at this level is you're going to be effective at sales, true, but you're not owning the responsibility of the sale you've made. And that responsibility is key to being able to sell with love. And that's why you can see a lot of fraud in sales. And that's where you see a lot of negative sales interactions when it comes to like thinking of the used car salesperson that only cares about their commission, stockbrokers of Wolf of Wall Street style that are just calling, trying to take your money. And there's a very toxic culture around sales that come from the effectiveness that you can reach when you don't care and follow a process. That's why I said it's a powerful tool. So great power, but great responsibility, Spider-Man, all that stuff. That's the fear pride paradox. And what I'm suggesting for people on this call is that if you care, you should not be in this zone. And I have a very strong doubt that any people on this call are going to be in that zone, because you're better than those people. You look down on these people. Those are the a-holes. These are the people that are ruining everything. And my God, if only I didn't care, then maybe I would sell like them. And that's why I'm not successful. And that's where most people are, is what I call the rational sabotage. It's better than the fear pride because you actually care. You're a better person. So you're like virtue signaling. And what happens is you're so afraid of taking responsibility of a sale that you're going to make, because no sale gives you a 100% guarantee that who you sold to will be happy. You're taking a risk every single time. And taking a risk requires courage. And if you're at the rational sabotages, you're going to make all the reasons as to why you're not successful. You're going to blame sales effectiveness. You're going to blame other people as to why they're getting more sales than you, but you refuse to learn the language that is necessary for them to understand the value you want to provide to them. I don't want to be like those salespeople. So you'll sabotage yourself. You'll create a perfect victimization of yourself so that you are safe. And then you're just blaming external factors. And to me, this is so unfortunate, because most people who are there have the best of intentions and have a great product. And I just want to shake them and let them know, hey, there's something beyond that, which is selling with love. And that demands courage. That's why I use the word love. People are like, sales and love, that's weird. It's not. Love takes courage, takes chances. You, especially romantic love, like you decide someone that you want to spend the rest of your life with. There's no guarantee in that, but you take the chance. Why? Because you know them enough to have a feeling that you are compatible with them. You know yourself enough that you know you're going to do what's right to deliver. You've built an offer that's incredible enough that it's worth taking a chance, because no matter what, you're going to make it right. And you know where you want to go. You know the impact you want to make. So go and sell beautifully. And I've mixed the love and the sales here, but in essence, this is what happens when you are clear on the impact you want to make, and that guides your decisions as to why you do what you do. You've gone to know the client as much as possible so that the risk that you take is not a reckless risk. It's a calculated risk with great intention. And you care enough for them that you're going to take that risk, but you're going to put policies in place to make sure they're happy. I know you will. So go sell powerfully, and you'll build the offer in response to what you want to do for them, because you've learned about them. And now you're going to learn all the sales techniques. Yeah, you need to pick up the phone. You need to do a webinar. You need to run ads, of course. And you do it because you realize that every person you reach is a soul that has a chance to transform. So you're not hesitating. You're sleepless. You're studying it. You're drinking the Kool-Aid because it's powerful, which leaves you with the last love, which I wanted to give, which is the whole process of being in sales is an investigation around your levels of self-love. I love, Andreea, what you said at the beginning is a lot of people hate salespeople because they feel they get manipulated. But when you have self-love, you have self-trust. And now nobody can change what you want unless it's truly what you want, because you have self-awareness, self-trust, self-confidence. And I promise you, you go into the path of sales and you will develop those faster than any other thing you can do.
And the way to don't feel so triggered around salespeople is truly trusting yourself and know that no matter what they're going to say, if it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't feel right, they cannot force me into doing anything. And I'm strong enough into my no or into my yes to just trust whatever it is that comes. This was so amazing, Jason. Thank you for sharing your passion. Thank you for sharing your heart, for pouring your heart to help as many souls out there who just need to hear this message today to learn how to sell with love. And I'm so honored to share your mission with the world. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. And any closing words that you'd like to share with people before we wrap this up?
I'll just say I've actually not done it. I've been so busy lately. I haven't done any podcasts. So it's an absolute joy to come and do this. And you're asking fantastic questions. You took the time to study me. So I feel very seen. And so I think you're doing fantastic for sure. And it was an absolute joy to come and share the message. So I'm hoping if there's one person that listens to this and takes an action to lean into having love for sales, I've done my part, because I know there are great people that want to do a positive change in the world. I can rest easy.
Yes, and I will link out all of your social. Go and read his book, follow him on Instagram. He has an amazing website, amazing services where he can guide you through selling with love. So make sure you reach out to Jason because he's here on a big mission. And if you're listening to this, there is a reason why. So thank you for being here and for listening and being with us on this journey. Thank
Thanks for tuning in to Spiritual Changemakers podcast. To stay connected and help us reach more people like you, please subscribe, follow, and leave a comment. Join our community of spiritual changemakers on social media to connect with like-minded individuals and continue the conversation. Remember, the power to create positive change is within you. Keep showing up as your best self and let's keep the magic of change alive. Until next time.